Hey guys, Thomas Busby here again. Welcome back for another lens review. Today I'm having a look at the 30mm for the GFX mount. Now before we dive into this, I do need to point out this is the first lens, GFX lens, I'm putting through my in-depth studio testing. So as far as comparing it to other lenses go, that comparison is going to have to happen as I review those other lenses in the future. But for a little bit of this, we're going to compare it to the 16mm f1.4 XF lens for the X mount, just because they are nearly the exact same equivalent. And while that is the best X mount lens, it would be interesting, it's going to be really interesting, to see how well the GF lenses hold up against the best of the wide-angle X lenses. So let's dive into it. Okay, let's not piss around too much with the YouTube fluff and dive straight into the thing that really matters the most, is how sharp is this lens. Center sharpness is fantastic and only starts to dive after about f20. So much so that I needed to add 4 more levels to my sharpness scoring compared to my XF lens tests. But also using a camera with such a big sensor and double the megapixels, this was to be expected. But still, it was very exciting to see that the GF 30mm can resolve such insane detail. Corner sharpness picks up a little from f9 to f20, and that's not to say it's not great before f9. Though I'm going to be honest, when I was testing this lens, I was a little surprised to see that corner sharpness couldn't resolve as much detail as the XF 16mm f1.4. That lens is insane, and with, yes, the bigger sensor and the far more megapixels resolving far more detail, corner sharpness on this lens still didn't quite hold up to the 16mm XF f1.4 lens, though center sharpness, partly due to that bigger sensor and more megapixels, absolutely blows it out of the water. So for majority of the lens, not even close, but when it came to corner sharpness, the XF 16mm f1.4 is still a phenomenal lens. But I will say it is very, very cool how constant the sharpness score, the graph, is. Compared to the rest of the GF range, I can't say just yet because I haven't tested those lenses, and so it is a little bit of an off comparison comparing it to an XF lens, but still very interesting to see the results. When it comes to a comparative price, the 30mm is actually really good. Aside from the GF 50mm, it's actually one of the cheapest GF lenses available. The 30mm gets a pricing score of 6.64 out of 10. Weighing in at 510 grams, when it comes to the weight of the lens for a medium format lens, it's fantastic and lighter than most. I tested this lens on the GFX 50R and walking around with it mounted on my camera for a good 45 minutes in hand, the weight of this lens never became a burden. I reckon it's fantastically light given the size and format of the camera system, and yeah, like I said, never became a burden. It was actually really enjoyable to walk around and not feel like I'm carrying a brick in my hand. Aberrations are actually great until about f16, f18, and even after which they aren't bad. Though I've read that aberrations of less than 0.3% when it comes to astronomical performance are actually a bad thing, as apparently it represents eating into your stars, though I haven't actually tested and proven this myself, it's just from a lot of research. And speaking of astro performance, when stacked up against the rest of the Fuji XF series and my advanced astro algorithm, which I'll have a new video coming for soon, it doesn't come out great. Still very usable, and I'm yet to do some in-depth astro testing with my 50R to see how far I can push the ISO and recover detail in post. But based on a standard 3200 ISO, the GF 30mm f3.5, which is the equivalent of 24mm f3.5, just isn't bright enough to compete with some of the XF lenses as far as astronomical performance goes. But at an average aberrational score of 0.34% is fantastic. So anyone shooting anything with that flare, that fringing effect, these GF lenses, well, this GF lens is built phenomenal. It is consistent, the aberrations are minimal, its sharpness is very, very usable throughout the whole aperture range. It is, as far as lens quality goes, fantastic. And if we assume that the GF 23mm f4 actually has the same aberrational performance as the 30mm, then the 30mm f3.5 actually comes out 37% better for astronomical photography, which might make it the best astro lens available for the GFX mount. We'll see. We'll have to wait until I test those lenses to really find that out. And if you'd like to find that, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. When it comes to features, it is a 58mm screw-on filter size at the front, which is awesome. They're nice and cheap, easy, common, small to get. It does have the usual aperture locking system. I actually love this. I wish they'd put it on more lenses where you can sit between 35 to f32 without jumping into automatic, and if you want to jump around to automatic, you've got to push this little button to click around once and then again to go around to custom. All the GF lenses have that, I'm pretty sure, but I really like that feature. And every single GF lens is also weather sealed. I know I've gone on about that a lot, but if you're new to GFX lenses and you're looking at stepping up, every single one of them is weather sealed, and I think it's fantastic. When it comes to dislikes for this lens, I really need to stress these are very minor and very, very personal. But first of all, the lens hood is a little bit easy to remove, like just a little bit of pressure and it comes loose. It's not like some of the other lenses where they're a little bit firmer. I think that I worry about that over time and maybe falling off in my bag. It's just, it doesn't take much pressure just to loosen that a little bit. Really, really small, but if you close your eyes when you're spinning the focus ring, sometimes I can feel a little bit of like friction, or it feels like grit in there. It's not, and you'd probably pick it up and move it and go, I don't know what the heck he's talking about, but just that, for such a high priced lens, GF lenses are not cheap, I was expecting a little bit smoother, just a smidgen more, and once again, really hyper picky. And finally, when you first grab it out of the box, cosmetically, I think it looks like shit. I don't think it's a great looking lens, especially without the lens hood. I'm not sure what it is about it, but it doesn't feel great. The lens hood on it definitely feels, it makes it look a little bit better, but to counteract that, like this big giant focus ring here is actually really, really ergonomically nice to use. I know this is the dislike section, but I think that big focus ring there looks a little bit silly, but as you're walking around with it, as some way to hold it is just operational use. It feels fantastic in the hand, just to counter out that personal taste of me thinking it looks like a ridiculous lens. Normally at the end of my videos, I like to put the lens through an overall scoring algorithm, comparing it to all the other lenses. But as this is the first GF lens I've given some heavy testing to, for me personally to compare it to the rest of the range at this stage would be silly. But if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, for now we will consider this the benchmark of comparing the other GF lenses too, as I test them over time. They're not going to be every single week like I did with the wide angle lenses, but they will be coming as I slowly trickle them through. And it'll be really interesting to see how well this compares against the 23mm f4. As a good 40% lighter and 25% cheaper, I think that'll be a real interesting comparison. And if I'm going to be honest, when I was first asked to review this lens, I wasn't that excited. I'd just finished reviewing tons of XF lenses and I didn't really feel like sitting in the lab doing more in-depth testing of lenses. I really just wanted to get out and shoot, so I was in a negative headspace. And even more so when it arrived and I pulled it out of the box and looked at it and just went, meh. So it really started off with a bit of an emotional handicap. I didn't get the excitement that a new lens deserves. But after having the 30mm mounted on my 50R for a couple of weeks and walking around with it and having it built into part of my daily routine, the 30mm actually really started to win me over. It is really, really ergonomic, despite what I personally feel is an ugly appearance, and that is a personal thing, no way at all does it affect image quality. Its image quality is fantastic, and it was really enjoyable to use, and I'm sad to see it go. And I hope when Fujifilm watch this, they feel the need to send it back to me again for more personal and in-depth testing. I'm really excited to see how it holds up to some of the other GF lenses, but for now, it won me over. It's actually, I feel, a great lens and one I would seriously consider buying. But not without testing a lot more of the other GF lenses first. If you'd like to see that, please hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions, please leave them down below and I'll do my best to answer them for you. But otherwise guys, until next time, I'll catch you next time.